Hello and welcome to the first episode of Alan Outlines. This is going to be my attempt to outline something that I came up with while I was headed into work this last Saturday. The idea behind this is to give you a little insight into how um, r- writing works, the creative process, and specifically how outlining things on a page can help you better solidify what you're going to be writing when the time comes. For this effort, this is going to be an opera because apparently I wanted something with singing. I'm going to be calling it Opera the Opera, and if you're wondering how I came with the title, up with a title so quickly, the fact is this is my second time recording it because the first time I recorded it, it didn't have the visuals that I wanted with it. So we're going to do this again, and we're going to, it's going to look a little more polished than it normally would, with its, unlike with its back and forth and what have you. But we'll just have to do what we can with what we've got. So the first thing you need to know about outlining is that, well, you don't have to use everything you outline. Simply put, we're trying to figure out what the story is, where the characters come from, and so on. I've got a lot of notes in that regard. You can take a look at some of my handwritten notes that I wrote on that Saturday morning. It took me about an hour and a half to get down these pages. And, well, I got down the pages, and now I need to transfer them to a digital format so that they are neat and tidy, and that my brain can focus on the creative aspect behind the writing rather than trying to figure out what the scribblings of my early morning efforts happen to appear to be. All right, let's start with the beginning. Of course, am using my own handwritten notes rather than the digital notes, but I give you those digital notes so that you could take a look and see. So, Opera the Opera. Because I wanted an opera, I've never done an opera. I'm not a lyricist, and I'm not a musician, so I don't bring much to the table except for the story. And the story is where I'm going to concentrate on. I may never have put this out into the general populace of works because again it's a fragile butterfly that is badly put together. It's only half there, but we'll get on with this because this is not about what I can't do. This is about what I can do. So this is an opera set in the modern age. Which means for those, the important things are cell phones exist, social media exists, modern sensibilities. As opposed to making an opera set in, say, like the 1600s or 1700s, where it's just a different time and you have different expectations. It does limit you on some of the communication difficulties or lack of difficulties, as the case may be. It's very easy to get things sorted through texts or phone calls or what have you, but as is the case with most of these stories, we'll be focused on actual character-to-character interaction. All right, so this is probably set in the, I could in the 80s or 90s and not have to worry about most of the above, but we'll do what we can with what we've got. All right, so we're going to open with Tiffany, a struggling writer. We find her in a luxury apartment of which she occupies only a single messy corner. That's because this is not her place. This belongs to a friend of hers. We'll get to the friend here when we get going. She is elbow deep in papers, research, and has a much worn computer. Typing at to little avail. She's obviously struggling with whatever she's up with. All right. So she's going to have a song, which is hers. Specifically, we're going to be because when people give things to the audience in terms of song, it feels more real. It feels more truthful than if they just say things, especially if they say things to other characters. Um, Song, dance, all seems more truthful. And this is one of the reasons that musicals are so popular and operas are so popular. And for that music, for that, in addition, like how Bollywood makes a lot of their money because a lot of their stuff has that realism, the verisimilitude, I think is the word for it, to use a big word for little effect. All right, song hers. She's all right. I'm going to go back to my original notes. All right. All right. Screw that. We'll back up. We'll back up. I hadn't wanted to do that, but I've written so they were such good notes. I hadn't wanted to. Yeah. They were such good notes. I didn't want to waste them, so to speak. So here we go. It is a romance. So we're going to be talking about people and individuals, and we're going to have four main characters. There's Tiffany, the writer. The opera is from Magnum Opus. She's often depressed because she can't quite match her ideals, and she's all about the ideals. We also have Monique, the producer, who is her friend. She's putting on performances, her thing. She's always busy. Let's define time for love, but knows that probably won't work. Something of a realist, but also an idealist, kind of between the things. We're also going to get into Peter the actor, who later on, who's getting by surface appearances. That's his thing. He's shallow and knows it. He's fine with living his life that way. He's happy enough. And then we'll get to Edward, the lawyer, who getting things in order is his thing. He's always thinking love stability. This is going to take place in a big city, because big cities are where playwrights and theaters can really prosper. If this was a small town theater, it would be a very different story. And who knows, it might be that when it comes down to it. It depends on a lot of different things. The story is not set. This is just the outline. There'll be one time jump in the middle when Tiffany completes her magnum opus and Monique puts it on the stage. So, on to Tiffany. The song is hers. The toils of being a writer. All right, do I have any notes on that? The song should be romantic, but instead it feels generic. How can I write this better? So cold, I need a sweater. And that's awful. And that's good because it's awful, because you can fix awful, but you can't fix what's not there. Sad all the time. Still can't find that rhyme. All right. And at this point, then, we have Monique will enter. Monique, she enters with her with a takeout order in one hand and phone in the other. She's talking with a director and is clearly in charge. So this is a way we can set up who she is without having to worry too much about telling us repeatedly or holding up a glowing neon sign. She is I don't think I need to do much more about that. She's set design. We can find money for half that. Half that. So, can we make that work? Well, we'll see. Tomorrow or... And at this point, she notices Tiffany is distraught. And Monique terminates the call to go to her friend. They hug and ask what's wrong. Tiffany has no good answer. Everything is always wrong. Didn't get the rhyme. Yeah. The two sit down and we get a duet. I don't think I did that the first time around. 4 characters. Alright, so... Yeah, you know what? My original outline was better than this. I'm going to have to merge the two at some point. Alright, so anyway, Monique asks Tiffany what's wrong. Everything is apparently... did you get your ride? You've been here all day while I've been away cavorting with sad mimes. That is a horrible rhyme. Monique sings about her day, meetings and meetings, the calendar is king, just secured funding from a gentleman named Ming. That's a character. The investor. He'll make an appearance in Act 3. He'll also act as a motivator to keep the plot moving. And this is a classic way of inserting a need for action or the appearance of the same into an otherwise dawdling play. It's the same with who wrote the Philip Marlowe. Raymond Chandler wrote the Philip Marlowe private detective things, and he always said that sometimes you just have to have a guy walk into the room with a gun. And in this case, it's going to be an investor with some money who's looking to make an investment. Alright, so anyway, Tiffany needs a hug, and Monique supplies that. They're friends, they sit together, they talk about the creative process. There's going to be a brief song, a duet about their different points of view. Monique is about the production and display, whereas Tiffany is about the creation and it's about the creation. She's also about something else. So there's a back and forth. There's the slog we're selling. Hard work for a single line. trying to manage a box full of kittens. Tiffany, and then we get to the break point that'll send us into Act 2, or perhaps the second part of Act 1. We'll see. Monique suggests that Tiffany get out for a change. Come to the theater, see where it'll take place, and maybe you'll get whatever you needed to finish it. Monique has a brief song aside to the audience. She's got an opera in her, I'm certain of it. Tiffany agrees to go, asks about the takeout. She's hungry, finally. Because sometimes when you're writing something in depth, you kind of block out the world, and you get hungry but you don't realize you're hungry. You get thirsty without realizing you're thirsty. You can even get tired without realizing you're tired, although when your eyes start to close, that's usually a big sign. And I have more than once fallen asleep in front of my keyboard, sometimes on top of my keyboard, and I in fact ruined a keyboard over that because that happens. So anyway, we move on to Act 2, because Act 1 was nice and tight. This one can sprawl a little more, perhaps. This is going to take place at the stage at the theater with a big stage. So there are technical people about. If you've ever been to theater, there are always technical people about. There's always something to do, something to configure, something to check. Even if you're just not putting on a performance, you're preparing to put up on a performance, or you're testing something, or there's all sorts of details. They're busy and vital. The director, much harried and nameless, male or female, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. The director is the director. What's important is that you know who they are because they have a clipboard. Alright. They're trying to block out a play. Which play? Noises Off, Frankenstein, The Genetic Opera. There are lots of different plays to pick from, and I can probably put one in there. To be honest, though, it's probably going to be Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, because it has some connotations with characters that are going to be coming up. I didn't realize this until I had written through the things previously, and that's the part of writing, is you realize things halfway through and then you add them and incorporate them, and that's what we're doing this time round. Tiffany and Monique enter. Tiffany trails slightly behind because she's nervous. Alright, there's a little back and forth with the director to establish Monique's job and career and place at the top of the hierarchy. And I'm going to utilize spell check there because, yes, that's IE. Anyway, the director has complaints about the scenery looking too fake and cheap. You can't have that, because people take a lot from from theater. They will accept a lot for the background, or to say we're setting a scene, it happens to be in a forest. If you've got, you don't have to have actual trees there to sell the scenery. You don't even have to have plastic trees. You just have to have the painting of a couple of trees. But they have to look good. They have to look like they put their time and effort into it in order to sell the scene. And if it looks too cheap, it's no good at all. But if it's too expensive, though, then you've really wasted your time on something that the audience doesn't need. There's a sweet spot there. Alright, so anyway, Monique goes off to discuss things with, apparently I named the director male, the director, and back, which is important because now Tiffany is left alone. She sings, the stage, my destination, my curse. My writing heads here, but I feel worse. I just feel worse and worse. And into this moment, this nadir of hers, we enter the actor, Peter, who's confident, swaggering, and handsome. Tiffany is smitten. She really should get out more. Yes, she should. Desperation makes for great beer gargles. Alright. Anyway, Peter's looking for the director. Doesn't know. Tiffany says she doesn't know. She's lying to get to spend more time with him. To spend some more time with him than a simple introduction. We have Peter's first song, an establishing song. It's going to be an aside to the audience and not allowed to the others. You'll know how this works. It's a common, not motif, but it's a common methodology to stop things for a moment. You can see this on shows where the one character seems to talk to the audience directly, and it can be really effective. If you've ever seen, they do it in Shakespearean productions as well as, of course, in TV, where it feels there's an intimate moment, and that's what Peter's going to do. Acting is and always will be about seeming what you aren't, but what others want to see. There's this little bint. She's a creative type, smitten by genotype. Best to let her down directly. And then that's in prose. And that's where we end the song. We've now got Peter's measure here. They talk. He's the lead in the forthcoming introduction. This is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is an actor. He's surface only. But Tiffany likes that because she presumes depth. If they ever have a relationship, that's going to be their one sticking point, where he's not deep enough for her, which is kind of she requires more, and he's not going to be able to give it. Everything's an act for him. All right, so we're going to have a brief duet about creative types and performing types. Their worlds are different: inner versus outer, surface versus deep. They're on a collision course, and Tiffany is driving. And to drive that home, Monique returns and swoops down on the actor to deliver a sexy kiss. They are apparently a couple. Tiffany is distraught again. This time, Monique doesn't notice right away. We're going to work. Then... Yeah. Work Monique into the Peter-Tiffany duet. When Peter drops out into silence, she drops out into silence, and that'll be a nice transition. He's a sexy beast. This is Monique, of course. He's a sexy beast and the current lead. Actors come and go, but right now he's what I need. Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. I am not good at that. His counterpoint. She's in control. She's on top. I don't mind that much as long as the production doesn't flop. His career is everything. Monique separates from Peter and decides that Tiffany doesn't look well. Let's keep moving. Need to see the lawyer about a contract or 3. Peter wishes Monique well. You'll place her mind for the change, and Monique will say something. Yours, clean the sink. This is important as it establishes Monique didn't want to intrude on Tiffany's efforts to write, even though was inconvenient. Even though it was inconvenient to Monique, she didn't want to intrude on Tiffany's efforts to write, which is what friends do, and sometimes you get around them, and sometimes you just don't pester them because they need their alone time. I'm a writer. I understand these things. All right, now we're going to shift over to Edward, the lawyer's office. It's a grand office. Lots of nice books. Lawyerly things, etc. What are lawyerly things? I don't know. Somebody will add that. We're good to go. Alright, he's in a motorized wheelchair. He is based on somebody that I knew in real life. Somebody that I would see on occasion when I was using the elevator to make deliveries for my day job years and years ago. I never even learned the man's name. He was a midget. He had serious health issues. He got around in a motorized wheelchair. He was also he had a mind as sharp as steel. He impressed the hell out of me every time we ever talked, and we did talk in the elevator. He liked talking to people. He initially we got to chatting because he said something in Latin, and I knew a little bit of Latin, specifically the fact that he was citing the first part of the Aeneid. I said "Sing of Arms and the Man" or something like that. It's been a long time since I've had to review the Aeneid in Latin, let alone do so in Latin. Um, he was trying to weave that into something he was putting before a judge as a motion, I think. And he was trying to weave it in, and we had a good chat about that. And he always impressed me by how intelligent he was. And so Edward is going to be based on there. That's his origin. So Edward motors to his desk and starts to work. May use manual wheelchair if the actor requires. Because having an actual machine on stage means it has chances to break down, and that might be a bad thing. It's just an added difficulty, and if we can use just a regular wheelchair, great. We can get around things. There are all sorts of practical reasons why we can't. I'd love to cast the perfect actor for the perfect part, but you don't always get that chance. And of course, Edward sings. Because everybody sings when they are introduced. We may have a chance to turn that on its head at some point, but we'll get to that when the time comes. Another contract, another filing. The business of law is boring. Wouldn't have it any other way. Trial by combat is not in play. Work, that doesn't even rhyme in some. Okay, anyway, work is. He's wealthy. He's wealthy. Leather brief case. He has an ex-wife, children, and now died of Cadillac. She's not here to nag him about that. Monique arrives, gives Edward a hug and cheek kiss. She likes him, clearly. She actually once had a thing for him, but was engaged. We'll have a brief duet about his duties, his position, his marriage. She'll slip in a question about his marriage, divorced but pending, alimony pending, and then retreats to contracts because they're here to discuss business. Monique is formal, knows Edward isn't interested in her. Partly that's due to the attorney-client position. There are things that you just simply cannot do as an attorney, or you shouldn't, that are morally suspect and can get you to lose your license to practice law, your bar, whatever that's called. So there are things he can't do, and because he's Edward, he isn't going to do it. That's he won't. All right, but Tiffany is another question. Tiffany slips inside. She'll say something witty. Look at all the books. It'd be a library if there it'd be a library if there was a sign to match. And Edward's going to like that. It's a good, they get off on the right foot. Which is a complete turnaround from what Tiffany had endured earlier. Great. They're talking about contracts with Monique. Tiffany makes keen observations. Because she's a writer and does that. Edward's interest is piqued. He's attracted but wary because he's got an ex. And They're going court maneuvers, alimony, a few more months, and he'll be free to date. Concussions. Because when you're doing alimony or anything involving a court where your reputation is in play, who you're associated with matters. And if you've got a girlfriend and the same time that you're undergoing divorce proceedings that looks really bad before a judge, the same holds true if you're dating while you're discussing alimony. It can just look bad, and he just wants to avoid that, and he's got the willpower to do so. So a song about his handicap, every day a struggle, every evening a victory. He wants more, love that can't ignore, children, no need, I've already got 3. This love would be for me. Suffice to say, he likes Tiffany. I like Tiffany. So anyway, that's a different love angle. Whereas Tiffany was attracted to Peter, Edward is attracted to Tiffany. Monique also likes Edwards, and so there we go. We've got a lot of running room for as far as the romances go, because Tiffany is going to brush off Edward's interest because her eyes are still full of Peter. We get Monique's aria on Edward as she watches the other two. He's smart, he's witty without having to buy a dictionary. Solid career, wish I'd known all those years ago before he married that vicious gnome. She really doesn't like his wife, right? She is going to lay out. He would not lay out. And that's one of the things that will give us insight into how Monique feels about him. And that's an excellent way to add a little bit of extra complexity here. She is going to be commenting about his relationship with a third person. And that's nice and complex. There's all sorts of layers about him, about her, about the ex-wife, which we will probably never see. So anyway, we wrap it up, wrap the day up. Tiffany has writing, Edward has drafting, Monique has her meetings. Off to the side, we have a vignette. Is it with a G? Apparently not. It is, but not the way I wrote it. Great. We have a vignette with Peter. He's off to a party. All right. So this is going to put us in the sights of Act 3, which is where the problems begin. Since we've set the stage, we've set the characters, now we have to throw some chaos into the mix and make them all unhappy. So, Tiffany will write up a storm. Monique is happy to put the production in motion when it is ready. Edward is going to come over for the contracts, purchases, money's involved. Tiffany has invited Peter over to audition for the lead. The lead. Monique couldn't do this. Would be seen as favoritism. And it's still Monique to Tiffany's. So Monique's going to give in to Tiffany's request that Peter have the lead. This is going to look like favoritism on the part of Monique, but it's really a favor to Tiffany, who isn't going to get that repaid by Peter by any stretch of the imagination. So, what is the opera Tiffany is writing about? I don't know. Not really. I could go meta, and it'd be about a playwright writing an opera in the 1600s. I need to set it modern so we can use the thrift store. That's something Monique would say. Just, it can't be sci-fi, which is too bad because that's kind of my strong suit. So it's going to be, should we make it a romance? How about a romance? Everyone loves romantic stories. Who winds up with who when the curtain falls, before the curtain falls? And that's something that the audience is going to be asking themselves about. This will also give us a chance to see how Tiffany sees love, how Monique sees love when she talks about the director, how Peter interprets love on the stage. Everybody gets in on it except Edward, who's... I'm going to have a reason for him to come by every so often, probably to see Tiffany, if nothing else. But Monique is not going to mind because she, of course, likes Edward and is more than willing to spend time with him. The question is, Peter and Edward have a talk. They are at different ends of living their life. And if you know anything, there's the categorization effort called Myers-Briggs, which some people swear by and others do not. I find it useful for getting an initial idea of what people are like, and then, of course, obviating the any hardline strictures from it, because there are artists, there are judges, there are idealists, there are engineers. And those are the four groups for the Myers-Briggs, the four main groups. You can break them down a little more, but you don't really have to. People tend to transcend those, regardless, but it's often useful to think about characters initially like that, where Edward is very much a judging personality, whereas Peter is very much an expressive one. So they don't exactly meet, but they do have sort of an understanding insofar as their worlds are not inner worlds, they are outer worlds. They at least share the outer worlds, career, reputation, etc. Skill, etc. They both long after the same thing: to have a good career, to have a good reputation, to be skillful. And that's where they're going to meet, but they don't see eye to eye on a lot of other things, especially moral things. Moral disunity between them. There's a social hierarchy. And then, of course, the fact that Edward is handicapped. And Peter doesn't like that. That's Peter's flaw. Can't see past the surface. And it will make him disliked, and I'm fine with that. Because we can whipsaw back and forth between seeing his point of view, understanding him, but still disliking him. We're going to move on with Tiffany. Tiffany's growth is she lives for love, she writes for love. She writes for love and completes a project, gives her confidence that Peter will abuse and then refute her advances. Will that break her heart? I don't know. Alright. Monique will see her skills tested. Managing people, making things flow smoothly. Can she keep Peter and Tiffany? Both. Will she pursue Edward? Okay. Lastly, Edward. What does Edward want from this? Edward to know Tiffany. Heart, mind, soul. No, not really. Wants to know Tiffany. Social, career, and a relationship. He wants the things that, well, she doesn't. Again, that's the difference between inner and outer worlds. What she wants from a relationship is she wants mind, body, soul, soulmate, her soulmate versus his helpmate, and he can't break through to her. So there we go. Those are all the outline struggles for Act 3. I'll get to the actual structure of Act 3 next time, because we're at the 40-minute mark and I've kind of overshot it. So here we go. This was the first episode of Alan Outlines. We'll move on to Act 3, the substance of Act 3 next time. I hope you're enjoying this. Have a good day.